Are we truly alone in the universe? Years ago, I saw some bizarre lights in the sky, and my curiosity was piqued. This led me down a rabbit hole to discover who these visitors might be and where they might come from. On my journey, I found out that many other people were having these direct encounters with beings from other dimensions, and that I too could communicate with them directly. Now it's your turn to interact with our galactic family. All right, today we have Jamye Price. I'm super happy to reconnect with you, Jamye. It's been a minute, and we got a little bit of catching up we were doing here before the call. Welcome to this new format, Interview with Ed. Thanks for coming. What's new in Jamye's world as far as what you've been up to since we've had 3 years of world change events?
Yes, that was pre-co. The way we do time now.
Yeah.
So it has been really interesting. Certainly, I mean, just to even kind of back up since the last time I saw you, like it has been a lot of deep strengthening, it feels like.
Mhm.
And now it feels like we're in this phase of like more empowered expansion. And so it's been really interesting. I think in those times, like in those 3 years, especially of the whole world adjusting to all of that, there was so much energy going on around that it really kind of highlighted everything that was going on individually and all the separation and things. So that it has definitely been a time of a lot of strengthening and then readjusting, like we had to physically readjust. So we were talking beforehand, like all of our studio now it's online, and that's been kind of an adjustment and and so there's been a lot of focus in that way, and it has felt like starting over in some ways.
Mhm.
And it has felt like rebuilding in some ways, but overall, it has just been this time of strengthening. And now it feels so. It feels like there's this new platform that we're working from that is. It's like it's more tied in, and I see this even in the way that the like the visions come or the way that the information flows, that there is definitely this clearer feeling of human higher self merge or physical subtle self merge.
Yeah.
And so it's interesting. It's definitely a time of application. Like, how does this apply into the physical realm? And very it's like experiencing it on a different level and just continually refining the things that we know into things that we experience. So it's definitely been a fascinating time since I last saw you.
Yeah, and we first met. I don't think did we say this in the other interview? I forget, but
Remember?
we first met in Japan with Lisa Roy. Lisa
Yeah.
was and you were also working with Voice at the
Mhm.
time, and we were just talking about not being able to get back to Japan. I know Lisa's been chomping at the bit. She's
Yeah.
been she's same thing, Ron built her a nice studio to work out of. And I interviewed Ron in that studio. It was fun for season 3. And yeah, it's been everything, right? Redoing our whole existence,
Yeah.
relocating, rebuilding, finding different ways to sort of roll with the punches. And for me, one of my big shifts was leaving the Hollywood industry, sort of just completely unplugging from that, which was sort of like a nice fallback. Like I knew I would
Hmm.
do this work, and then this was my fun work, which was sort of my full-time job anyways. And actors really don't have full-time jobs; they're kind of always part-timers. And so it's been that just unplugging from that, fully embracing this work, and letting it show how it supports me and supports this community. And so it's been fun. Have you noticed a increase in volume of people tuning in to the messages?
Yeah, it's interesting. It kind of it kind of went in or came and went in waves, I would say.
Mhm.
There, there, things were really building. Like there was a lot of people amping up. And I even remember the classes prior to COVID. And I almost never, like, I don't want to teach someplace physical in February because
Right.
people flying in will have trouble with weather and stuff like that. But it was the only time that was available. And so I booked it, the year before. And when we were doing that class, it was like, whoa, I feel like we're preparing warriors for some
Mm.
reason, it was
Yeah.
just intense like that. And everybody just kind of felt intent. It was awesome and so powerful. And then a week later or so, maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks later, shutdowns happened. And so it was I could see it was this divine timing, and then it seemed like everything kind of stopped for a little bit, but we were in online class mode because that's what we always did after the classes in
Mhm.
person. Now we just do the whole thing online, but, the as everything kind of stopped, there would be these waves where then more like people were hungry for information, and then it would feel like the ebb would happen and the focus would be somewhere else. And it felt like that a lot throughout that whole time frame. And now I see that wave starting to happen again. And when Ariane was giving me the energies for this year, like the overall energies, they were showing me that it's kind of in a building phase, which it has been since last year, where we're moving into another level of empowerment, another level of mastery, personal responsibility, creative power, all the different synonyms for that. But at October of this year, there's going to be another big wave of awakening and
Mhm.
opening. And so those ebbs and flows are definitely going to happen. But it has been fascinating to watch it over these current years because it has felt so palpable the way it goes up and down so quickly. And I remember in the early days of a lot of ascension focus, like um, early 2000s, somewhat in the later 90s, but especially in the early and mid 2000s, where there just became this next swell of focus on it. And that's when I became really focused on it as well, like in those early 2000s. And there would be these times where things would amp up and then they would soften for a bit. And ever since, and then it kind of kept building towards 2012, and it seemed like such an unknown for such a long time. And you could just see the waves of people coming in. And then this past year has felt like 2012 on steroids,
Mm.
like just the amp up on the positive and the negative, things that will distract and then things that will bring us into that greater mastery. And so it's been so interesting to experience.
Well, one of the things that, just before the call, and I said, let's save it for when in front of everybody, is we were talking about light language because I think I first heard about light language from you. Actually, I may have heard it briefly from uh, Bridget Nielsen. She had mentioned light language, but I didn't know what it was. And then going deeper into it, I didn't know there were light language practitioners like yourself. And then you had just come out with your deck at that time when we did the interview, and a lot of like light language coming through there. So it was just your interview really opened up my curiosity for doing the light language episode where you also got to join us for that too. So thank you so much. But now it's like everybody's doing light language. It's like it's on TikTok, it's on Instagram. We just did a meditation, 5-5 meditation, and there was 3 or 4 people doing light language on the meditation. So super cool. How does it feel to be sort of the pioneer of that field? And now it's grown so big.
Yeah, it is it's so awesome to watch. And this is uh, this is why I felt that just deep compelling, even though I went through a lot of times where I was like, what am I doing with my life? Like when I quit corporate, finally, I was like, at first I was like, yeah. And then I did the first CD and I heard the light language just raw like that. And I knew I was so committed at that point. And I just had that final meltdown where I was like, oh my goodness, what am I doing? This seems so weird. And yet all of that was these time frames of experiencing something that felt so sacred and so powerful. I loved it so much that I knew I would keep moving forward, obviously. And what we were talking about, it's something that I do talk about in the book, but in the early days when my body was moving and I was working on clients, it would always come when I was doing healing. And my guides were teaching me at that time. So they were very interactive with me while I was teaching, while I was doing the session. And I had asked them, what is this? Why is my body moving around? And they never said, this is light language. Here's the whole path. They would give me these other types of answers. And one of the things that they said was, there's this many people on earth that are doing this. And, it was a number that, and I wasn't asking how many people are doing this, but that's what they would answer. And they would do that every once in a while. And that number would go up and down. So people would start it and then they would suppress it. I get it. It
Mhm.
felt weird, but I was in such a loving environment in that, with it being silent in the beginning and the healing format. I just loved it. But that number would go up and down and it would change exponentially. So where it would be much smaller, however long later, when they would tell me the next time, that it was much bigger. And I was like, wow, because at that point, you couldn't find information about it.
Mhm.
YouTube was so small, people weren't on there. And so I knew that it was going to keep growing, and that as we got into a vibration that was more resonant with it, as more people felt comfortable with it, then it was going to start opening up more easily and become much more prevalent. And that's what we're seeing now, that it's everywhere and people are recognizing it's a natural skill that we all have. Not
Mhm.
that everyone has to do it in order to reach that level. There's so many different ways, but it's something that's available to all of us if someone wants to. So
Mhm.
um, I just love that it's growing so much and just expanding so quickly. And that's the way that it was always going to be, because it's
Eh,
part of us. And as we raise our vibration, we just tune in naturally to skills that are already available.
and people are on the receiving end are feeling tangible shifts, during the transmissions. So there's much like channeling, how during the shows I would go in and edit and get more out of it every time I'm in the editing room, and I'd go, oh, how come I didn't notice that at first, or how come they said this, but I didn't quite understand that concept, but now I get it. So the layers that come through in the channeling, it feels very much those same type of layers are being delivered through the light language platform.
Mhm. Yeah.
So, which is
Yeah,
super cool.
it is. And what I hear so often is, it feels so familiar, or it sounds so familiar, or I just started crying and I don't know why. And I wasn't sad. And it's that deep recognition. And it's just part of us. And that recognition is in there, that we have these natural skills. And yeah, it's fascinating. I just love it.
Well, how since then, well, since COVID, I guess, since our last interview, how has your work evolved any more? Anything new or different, or just yeah, maybe fill us in on what's happening in the work with
Yeah.
the work
So
and the messages.
So right now I'm teaching crystalline soul healing. So we're in some of the about halfway through that class, and that has been really fascinating, because crystalline soul healing it's a Lyran technology. It's a Lyran modality where they spent years with me building an alchemical template. And so it's a modality that really mimics our fractal nature and how we're part of this universe, the separation and the connection, the physical and the non-physical. So that has been really interesting to watch because that modality was created back in the mid 2000s when I was finalized, when I was back there in LA.
Mhm.
And I taught it twice, once a year while I was still living in Los Angeles, and I was still doing everything out of my home, my apartment there. And then as I moved to Sedona, they said, we want you to just focus on light language for now. So I stopped teaching crystalline soul healing for quite a while, like,
Mm.
I don't know, almost not quite a decade. No, it was more like 5 years. It felt like a decade. and and so I knew that it would come back around when the energy was more ripe for it. And then I first started teaching it in Japan and for a couple of years, and then I started teaching it again here quite a few years ago. I think the first year of COVID actually. And we taught it in person every year of COVID, and then we moved it online. So we'll do it in person again eventually. Um, but that has been really fascinating because whereas eh, I had seen that light language growing where people were ready for that expression more and more. They were ready for those higher concepts of what we're capable of, what's natural to us, and what that really means. And that's
And well,
been
right quick, could
Mhm.
you define light language? Because I guess there's a few questions in the chat that are just people
Yeah.
still new to the concept and the idea.
Right. So light language is an expression of nonlinear information. And so it doesn't follow the same rules as our linear languages do. So we memorize and lies our languages so that we can speak linearly. And light language is a flow of information that is still in its nonlinear waveform. So we use a different part of our brain and to transmit it and to receive it. So it's part of our nonlinear expression. So it might be spoken, it could be sung, it could be written, or it can be signed in the air, written in the air, or moved through the body. So it's nonlinear expression. And that is such a big part of what our ascension is in general. So that's why it's opening up more now because it's a mirror of our ascension as we are becoming more conscious with the nonlinear, with our subtle selves. So light language is part of that.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And
And
so,
and
so
then
you put that on the you
the
put
back
that
burner,
back
the
burner,
crystalline on the back
and then
burner.
you came and then did light language, and now you're reintroducing the crystalline modalities.
Yes.
And what does that
Yes.
entail?
So that is an alchemical template that works like a deep, vast instruction set, or kind of like a program, where the practitioner is activating the program, and the higher self of the receiver, which might even be the self, but the higher self is utilizing that program to release and activate based on whatever's appropriate for that receiver in the moment. So it's again that nonlinear concept of how we tune into information flow and then the capabilities that are present within that, so that we're continuing to expand our linear expectations to merge more with the nonlinear realities that we're in with that as well. So the watching that crystalline soul healing flow and expand, that has been really fascinating because a big part of light language is that we express it. Now, light language is not always audible or visible, but that's a big part of it because that's a big part of our experience here is the expression. And crystalline soul healing is silent. There's no natural movement that happens to facilitate it. So it it's another part of stretching that capability of understanding how much our energy flow or our information flow is affecting the world around us. So we're just continuing to refine how we understand who we really are and what this experience is all about. So that's been really fascinating.
And why is it called crystalline? Uh,
Soul
the-
healing.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So um that's a much longer story about how they actually gave me that word, because they
Okay.
gave me the sound, but they didn't finish the word. And, if they wanted to, they would have.
Hmm.
But for a while I was like, okay, well, it'll come. But I was thinking like, well, is it this? Is it this now? And eventually, that was I was reading a Cryon channeling, and they mentioned the word crystalline. And as soon as I saw the word, I started crying, and I knew that's the word. So they were showing me that they wanted that word because that is essentially what we are doing. We are creating in our own energy fields something that is more crystalline, in that it flows energy more directly. So, a great example of that is Dr. Emoto's work, where he would show like the Tokyo tap water that just looks like a big blob.
Yes.
And
Right.
then I've drank that.
Me too.
And then yeah. um, and then with intention and prayer and gratitude and all kinds of different focuses, love and peace, the crystals actually change. They become much more organized. They flow energy and information more clearly, and they show that clearer representation. So, in essence, that's what we're doing in our energy fields. We are becoming more conscious and more directive with our energy, and creating more clarity and strength within our energy fields. So, that was part of why they wanted that word crystalline within that we are becoming more refined, and that has a clarity, and it has a strength to it.
I see.
So, big part of that.
So yeah, so you, and especially in this field, you hear a lot of people talk about moving from carbon-based to crystalline form. So and I'm assuming that's along those lines, but a lot of people, I think, are like, how does that work? How does carbon turn into crystal? Uh uh and does it need to be under pressure? How does that work?
Right.
I,
Right.
um
Yeah.
yeah.
And I feel like we all get the information in the way that it most makes sense to us, or the way that it most applies. And for me, my guides have always been very practical. Like, it's either application or it's peripheral for a while until it's understood in application. And so I can't speak to what some other people may mean with that, because they may get more intricate or physical information than I get.
Mhm.
But from the way that they talk about it in relation to this, is it's more about changing our propensities and our density, so that it's a little more available for interaction in ways that aren't the same kind of carbon-based density. Now, whether or not that would change a physical structure in our lifetimes, I don't know. I don't get that information, but it's
Well, it
just
does
not what comes in.
with Dr. Emoto's work. It does change physical structures. So
Yeah,
with intention and prayer, or all the positive energies that we can sort of project towards that structure, that experiment that he's doing. So so yeah, there probably is a
absolutely.
physical.
Yeah, because it changes the way that energy flows, way that information flows through us. And that to me is the way that I understand that density change, or the dimensional shift, the dimensional expression, as Ariane calls it. because that change in your geometric flow
Mhm.
creates that difference.
And something that I've noticed, especially during these COVID years, was the obviously we were on lockdown. We can't hang out as much as we used to. The whole social economic ways of doing things shifted. Some for the better, some not so good. But for the most part, I think a lot of us are in a better new area. But I've noticed that certain friends and people that we used to hang out with, we're no longer hanging out with those people anymore. We've sort of, and part of that's physically because of the lockdown and stuff, but a lot of that is just like, that person's reaching out, but I just feel like I'm not motivated to call the person or maybe I'm more gravitated to hang out with this group now instead of the old folks that I used to, not that they were old, but the folks that I used to hang out with.
Right.
That camp, those old camps, I should say. So yeah, that's been a big part of this, focusing the intention perhaps on who we are and what we want to do and who we want to be, and then aligning with those energies that help facilitate that, as opposed to the old construct, the old paradigm. I know a big part of my old work in the Hollywood industry, which I was slowly getting out of, but was the hustle. There's always this, you've got to knock on doors, you got to be in people's faces. And that was always the worst part of it for me, was I just like, I'm just not interested in doing that. Never really was, but you kind of had to do it to get the job, get in people's faces and stuff. And now I'm just like, no, I'm not going to do that. I mean, especially now after leaving, but that transition was like, no, that's just seems like such a waste of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And both of those things just feel so much like resonance. The people that we're around, or how we're choosing to focus our time now, it's a little more self-empowered. And I think that's a hard one for a lot of light workers to get, myself included, that we have to be giving, 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 and in that sacrificial way, like, oh, I can help that person. I
Mhm.
know I can't be mean. And you don't have to be mean, and you can still help people,
Yeah.
but you are making choices that are more about what's resonating with me, what's affecting my resonance, like that tuning fork, and making other things vibrate. And so we're making choices that feel um, more fulfilling, so that that energy can really flow out. And then the same, even with work, where we're seeing a lot of that shift, where people are like, I'm going to hold some boundaries.
Right.
And and then it's about your own resonance that then draws that in more. And so we're kind of coming to a place where even the environment is causing us to bloom in ways that we may not have as easily or directly or at a critical level with pre-COVID or something. They're
Yeah.
taking
The
the
big
benefit.
the 9 to 5, right? Getting in the car and driving to work. Like we proved with COVID that we don't have to do that, for not all jobs, but many, we're
Yeah.
able to do remotely. And now we're seeing, the economic shifts with that, with all of this, commercial real estate, falling apart and all that stuff. So we're rebuilding the world, through new modalities, and
Yeah.
I think we do the inside changes and then it reflects outside. So you said October. What is there any specifics on what guys might be saying is coming down the pipe in October?
So, a- and the most of their information is generally more ascension based. They don't get
Okay,
into a lot of the details of, like, this is going to happen in the physical world, or this political thing, or blah blah blah.
sure.
They just, when it comes up, it comes up. Um, so I'll actually backtrack just a little bit,
Okay.
because we're in May right now,
Yeah.
and this is starting the shift into a whole focus that's going to be a lot more mentally focused, meaning holding our focus or relaxing our focus when that's appropriate, that we're implementing a lot of that um, mind following the heart mind balance, and yet utilizing what they were talking about so much last year, which was our creative harmonic, like hold those higher potentials. And so this first part of the year has been a lot about fortifying the physicality and the heart foundation. So now we're moving into this time where it's a lot of mental focus and um, things like not getting overly distracted by the things that are going on around us. And that doesn't mean
Right.
never pay attention to anything, but watch where your energy flow is going. And then it's the things that are in our lives. How are we dealing with those? How are we able to find that neutrality and move that into its full flow of to the positives and its opposites or the negatives that create that wholeness? And and then the thing that they were showing me about October is actually a reflection of things that came at the very beginning of 2020. And that's the tone of awakening or Gabriel's horn. And so I'm expecting from that, based on what they've shown me, is that there's going to be another amp up for those of us that are already awake, all of you that are here. For those of us that are already awake, there's going to be another amp up, and then there's going to be a lot of shift with others that will help wake them up. And sometimes those things are smooth, sometimes they're not as smooth, but our work within that is that neutrality that keeps expanding out and balances the positives and the negatives, doesn't avoid it, but encompasses it, so that that creative harmonic, which was the energies of last year and this year, we've been working connection. So that it, and around that time of October, that personal connection and the connection to the outside world that we've been working with is going to amp up to another level. So especially that creative focus. So it actually feels really exciting. And when they first gave me that, I'm not an astrologer, so I wanted to see what was going on in October. And I don't know the details of what's going on in October, but I did see that there's some eclipses at that time. And of course, we just finished an eclipse series a few days ago.
Yeah.
And Aries and Scorpio, those are two powerful signs. Like they move a lot of energy. And I just think that was so perfect of deep preparation for all that we're going through and all of this amazing awakening that is happening, even though if you look at the details, some of the details that are going on around the earth, there's a lot of challenge.
Sure.
And that's part of this whole thing, that it's stirring things up to rebuild anew. And the rebuilding happens simultaneously with that. When I think back of uh, commercial real estate, for example, that you
Yeah.
just mentioned to me, when I was in Los Angeles in the mid 2000s, so I left there in 2010. So the 2008 crash had happened and all of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff had happened. Well, I often knew when things were happening ahead of time because I knew people in commercial real estate, and you could always see it there first.
Hmm.
Um, and and yet that writing was on the wall even then. Like this thing just keeps going through these waves that it's not adaptable and balancing. And that's what we're working through so much now, is adaptability and balancing into the constant change that's part of the physical realm.
Yeah. The thing that I feel, the validation from doing the show is I first started in 2014 with interviewing Wendy Kennedy and then going through season one over from 2014 to like 2016-ish, 15, 16, 17. And this whole talk about ascension, right? There's this big ascension thing going on. That was the theme that everybody was, I was like, what is this ascension thing everybody's talking about? What's going on here? And then sort of, gearing up, there's going to be a big change, a big shift. And then, you're like, okay, well, this is after 2012, right? We're supposed to have this Mayan shifting. Um, but now when COVID sort of started, it was like, yeah, this is the actual physical signs of this major shift that people kept talking about. And it continues, right? I remember season 2, I remember I interviewed Lee Harris in 2019, I believe, beginning of 2019. And the Z's came through and said there's going to be 9 years of some rough times. And in my mind, I'm like, oh, can't be any rougher than what we were already dealing with right at that time. And here we are. We're going through. We're only a few years into this now, but the difference I'm seeing, is so many more people are. At that time, it was like a deer in the headlights scenario for a lot of people. But now, since it's been happening, and we constantly, the news cycles constantly are throwing new stuff at us. So it's this evolution of people questioning the reality, questioning the operating system that we've been doing things on, and it's really nice to see people one question, and then a lot of people say, this is not right. We need to make some changes. We need to do something. I still feel there's more in our groups. Obviously, we're looking for solutions. We're implementing. We're doing the legwork. But I'm seeing in the bigger news world groups as they're falling apart because of censorship and everything. The ones that are talking about this stuff, they're talking about the problems, but they're just now starting to think about solutions. Or this is broken. So it's still a lot of calling out the brokenness as opposed to actually getting in there and doing the work. But we're close. Maybe this next big events that happens might be more of a let's get busy building the new world, as opposed
Yeah.
to calling out the broken one.
Right. And it's helpful to see what's broken and then shift your focus towards the potentials. And that's a big thing that Ariane has talked about for a long time. Like they're very big on don't avoid reality, let your authentic emotions flow. You don't always have to be feeling positive. You get there when you let things happen authentically and all of that stuff. And the it- that whole work of light work of maintaining that focus now feels much more palpable. Like there's a critical mass that's being reached and building, and really interesting to experience that. Like sometimes some of the people that we would probably judge and go, they're so 3D. No, we wouldn't do that, but we would joke and go, oh my God, they're so 3D. Yeah.
Lots of jokes.
But some of the people
Comedy's kept this in
exactly, I
life
love
through
that.
this.
Yes. So, no, but some of the people that just, weren't interested in this stuff have surprised me, especially over these more recent years. But just being much more interested and open, and recognizing that there's things that are happening, there's things that are building beneath the surface, and it's part of the work to focus in ways that inspire you and keep you moving forward. So it's been really fascinating to watch. I mean, even sometimes I will notice that I'll have to pull back from certain things, or just, like kind of cocoon for a little bit to replenish in different ways, because there's so much intensity in the energies. But I also really feel those deep shifts occurring and kind of coming to the surface. And even like, October, when they talk about that, I mean, all of these shifts are the internal things that we're experiencing, because especially as light workers, we're ahead of the manifestation. We uh, are holding those potentials and nurturing that energetic, that crystalline structure, so that it has the vehicles to build through, the momentum to build through. So it's been really fascinating. It's definitely a really cool time. This the shifts are so palpable now, and they're so constant. It's so fast.
It is
There's
actually,
not
it's
those
hard
break
to,
times.
for me, I look at news cycles. I'm actually constantly looking at the news, but not like the mainstream news in the sense of digesting it for believing in it, but just to
Right.
see, okay, this is what they're talking about
Yeah.
now. This is what's going on. This is what's trending, and just to sort of use that as a pulse for where
Yep. I
humanity
do
is
too.
and what's being
Yep.
accepted. And so I do follow a lot of, the news, and you're right. It's nonstop, the goofiness, the craziness.
Yeah. And it's also, I see like things that I'm like, wow, we've known that for so long. Here
Yep.
it is. It's coming out in the mainstream. Oh, look, there's another one. We've known that
New
for so
York
long.
Post just talked about Robert Kennedy talking about the CIA assassinating his uncle. So that's making mainstream news now. So
Mhm.
that's cool to see that stuff come out. Wade, did you had your hand up? Did you want to pop in for a quick question?
Well, I think you went into it and answered. I was wondering if there was anything physical that was caused this change in October. Whether it's another COVID thing or whether it's solar flare or what may be coming. But I think Jamie said she looked for something but didn't quite identify anything.
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't see anything physical, and that doesn't mean that it won't, often, I mean, in fact, even when COVID was coming, they never told me about COVID. They never said there's a pandemic coming. But I saw these signals, like there's things I would normally do by certain times or I wouldn't do at certain times, like teaching that class, but there was other things like I was supposed to go to Japan in April. And I am meticulous about booking either December or January, depends when I want the money to flow. So January came and went, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to travel soon. And I just couldn't do it. It never did it and never got to it, even in February. So once we went into lockdowns, I was like, well, I never booked those tickets. So um, I haven't felt something directly like that. And yet it's almost like this sense of there's a strong enough push that a lot of people are feeling this call to change things. And so I wasn't necessarily feeling something physical. Now, the interesting thing is the right after that, it's almost like I don't have any detail right after that. And yet, they're still showing me about the following year in 2024, where this whole flow that we've been working, especially these past few years of like amplifying the creative harmonic, really becoming clear within ourselves of our connection and how we connect to the external and how it connects to us, that this whole move towards wholeness is going to be amplified in 2024. So it ultimately feels very positive what we're moving into, which is always my thing with Ascension anyway. I know what we're moving into is this beautiful evolution. But details like that, no, sorry, Wade, I didn't get anything like that.
That's okay. I've been feeling, change is just, a lot of ups and downs. And the good thing is if the downs don't stay around too long. So I guess that's a good thing. You also notice I'm getting sensitive to different foods and things. Used to be able to eat anything. Now I'm like, oh, this gives me a headache. This does this. Everything. So I feel like I'm going through some change and I don't know what to expect in October.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. That's definitely been coming up, a lot of different sensitivities. I used to use tea tree oil. My cats will claw me some. I'll put some tea tree on it. I cannot use tea tree anymore. Now I have a reaction to it. So yeah,
That may
look
also
for all those
be
sensitivities.
because the tea tree. I've heard that the tea tree oil quality has sort of been diluted, or it's been, I don't know. I've heard from some essential oil people that are like, yeah, tea tree used to be this sacred thing, and it's now gotten kind of contaminated in a sense. It's not
Mm.
so pure as it used to be. So But
Interesting.
and cats are not supposed to be near it, so it's very harmful for your cats. So
Yeah, we don't put it on them, but
just know that
yeah,
when they get near you,
interesting.
if you put tea tree oil in your hand, and don't pet your cats, not good for them.
Yeah, no, they hate it being near us if there's any on it. It's strong.
Well, should we use? Should we take a? Do you want to take a little break? Are you good to go right into channeling?
I'm good. I'm
Okay.
good. Yeah. Yeah.
How's this? Anybody else? Any quick questions? We can always, when you're out of it, we can do a final. Get all your website stuff and good stuff. Good connections here. So yeah, when you're ready, we'll move into the channeling mode.
Cool. Excellent. Blessed beings, as always, it is a precious moment when we meet in your awareness. For it is your awareness that shapes life. It is your awareness that allows life, the broader flow of life, to move through you. It is your awareness that refines the physical experience, and it is your awareness that creates the changes around you and within you. It is a sacred gift that you bring to life with your precious awareness. It is at this time especially that your physicality is shifting in ways that support the increased flow of your awareness. The connection and the coherence within that heart and mind flow is expanding. It is refining into the specifics that allow the physical experience of humanity to change more rapidly than it would without your precious awareness. And yet, this is a natural process to you, that all that you think and feel flows with the information of love that is the core of who you are. And yet, in this physical experience, the love that you see around you and the lack thereof supports your inner expression to strengthen the flow so that love connects more deeply into who you are on earth. And this is the progress that your brilliant mind is bringing forward. This is the progress of all of the work of discovering who you truly are, so that the mind then flows in that powerful connection with your heart. What your awareness is moving through now is to understand the self in your broader nature, to understand the complete flow that from your physical experience would be your right and your left brain separation, becoming far more connected, so that as you are perceiving, receiving life, that it becomes more directly understood through the physicality of the self or the separation of the left linear understanding with the understanding of the connected self, or that right conceptual broad understanding. Your energy is flowing more clearly through both aspects of that dual separation within the brain. Now, this is an oversimplification of what you are experiencing at this time. And yet, from a physical perspective, yet more densely connected in with your tri-separation of the brain, where it easily can be seen as 3 hemispheres flowing and overlapping. This is becoming much more accessible to you now. So you have your left and right brain separation. You could easily separate the front and the back, and yet it is more of a fullness in the whole back of the brain that is overlapping into the front. So it is not just like equal sides. There is a broader flow of the unconscious into the consciousness. And your awareness is shifting now because of that. So how you're receiving and perceiving life is affecting the natural flow of how your brain operates within this physicality. And as this is occurring, you may find that there are shifts in the way that you sleep, the way that you think. You may find that there are times where you feel less connected or as if you are daydreaming. You may find that things that you understood clearly now bring you into that paradox of moving into a new bandwidth of understanding with what was possible before. You may also find that the need for sleep changes. Sometimes it becomes erratic. Sometimes it becomes much deeper, or you find that need to sleep at times that you did not before. You may find that your eating habits are changing to support this physical shift. And all of this is bringing that physical expression into a new wave of duality connecting within you, so that the triality that you are becomes more clearly understood. That at all times you are experiencing your separate human self and the broader connection with all of the separation that is around you, as well as that overarching connection as well. So that separation within that experience of connection becomes more understood. And this is that powerful shift that your awareness is more amplified within at this time. It is a powerful and exciting time of your physical expansion, your mental and emotional expansion, as your subtle bridge becomes more finely attuned to the subtle within the physical experience. It is for this reason that all that you experience with your awareness creates a profound shift. That the changes that you are going through are creating new waves of movement that at first feel a bit erratic, as if water was hitting a rock and then sprays in many directions. And yet, as that ebb and flow keep working, that flow that seemed chaotic becomes much more coherent. And this you are working through on a very physical, yet soft level that affects your experience, and yet it is still part of your subtle self. And as you move through these changes, you will begin to perceive the separation more and more through that lens of a connection, that those experiences become more directly available to you. And as you see the chaos that is occurring in the world around you, you will begin to recognize the coherence that is building within it. And yet, this has always been a natural part of the human experience. It has always been a natural part of the physical experience, that there are cycles that are moving through and affecting how you grow and how you blossom, just as you see with your seasons around you. It gives us great pleasure to connect with your awareness, because we understand the sacred power that is within you. Our Isha, Ema, Eta speaks directly to this. That love is the connection between all things, because all life is born of love. That unconditional expression that allows, and yet understands that at the core of all is a connection. And that all life is flowing in give and receive. And just as you receive us, we receive you. There is no separation at certain levels. And that giving and receiving changes life. That this has always been the power that is within you. And while you may not see those changes immediately in the physical, as you continue to repeat and build those new coherent patterns of flow, they become more evident to you, and that in turn amplifies your awareness evermore. And the waves that you all are creating will continue to build, because that is the natural flow of life. Isha, Ema, Eta.
Excellent. Thank you. Is it okay to ask some questions at this time?
Absolutely.
Great. Speaking of this entering into this new energy, a big part for me has been understanding our past and understanding the human experience and where we came from. And I'm beginning to understand more and more that perhaps this physical version of our incarnation here on Earth perhaps originated from the Lyran civilization and some of our first humanoid visitors here on this planet were from Lyra. Would you be able to go into any of that and the connection to the Pleiades and some of the other of our ancient history and how that first formed the Lemuria, perhaps?
Yes. So the expression that you are originated from the Lyran experience. While we do not look the same, the expression of humanoid physicality began with the Lyran experience. As we experienced our physicality, at the core of it was understanding our separation very directly. And so we separated the self within we saw the separation around us, and then through time, learned to integrate that separation within. Within that experience, though, of separation, which spanned billions of years, we moved from planet to planet and expanded our expression. Much of this history has already been known to you, and the details of it continue to unfold in ways that become more experiential and applicable as you experience what is happening on Earth. Our contribution to this has been very deep. It is a foundation of expression that began on Earth before this humanoid track and before your Lemurian track, and yet has always been intertwined within those. Much closer to your expression has been your Venusian connection, your Syrian connection, and your Pleiadian connection. Very much entwined within the current human expression. Those are not the only ones, but they are very directly related to your Lyran heritage and more directly connected with the Lemurian time frame. The Lyran experience within that has been that seed of physicality that allowed this planet to continue to express for the human evolution, the humanoid evolution. So we were part of terraforming this planet and setting up the magnetics that would support the humanoid expression. Part of what we did was build the soil structures and build the energetic flow so that the magnetics could continue to support life. And by the time the Lemurian experience occurred, our terraforming that had been supported in many different ways was finally building into a time frame that could support the evolved state of human expression so that it could flourish on its own and bring in new humanoid so that the continued experience was able to be supported. And yet, the physical aspects of Earth have continued to renew that process and bring in other influences so that the fuller polarity integration could occur. So the humanoid expression that is occurring here now has a much broader mix than our original Lyran expression. And yet, the beauty within that is that it continues to integrate into the original love that we all are. So the physicality of it continues to be supported by the ancestral connection that we have with the physical land, but it is more directly supported by closer physicality that has always been seeding here on Earth. And the Lyran connection within the Akash is bringing up a much deeper connection within you. And it is for this reason that we wanted to connect more directly and more frequently. Because as your 2012 turned, it marked a time frame where the amplification of your energy was able now to wrap back into a broader flow. And you have the potential to move this progression in a very rapid way that may not have occurred as easily, though I understand that that may not seem so easy. That has the potential to occur more easily because of the work that all of you have been doing with your awareness.
Excellent. I might circle back there to that topic later, but let's get some other questions in here. Mark, you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Thanks. I had a couple of questions. One, in regards to the chaos, I've for a long time been able to see the perfection and the beauty in the chaos and how it just allows for expansion and evolution. I was curious if you're able to comment on where we are on the chaos, like if we're like approaching a peak or if we've already peaked, and how much that's going to involve the earth itself, like things like more earthquakes or the magnetic lines, like since you're obviously familiar with them, the like the magnetic fields collapsing and reversing, like the poles reversing. Do you know, or can you say if we're going to be experiencing much more significant natural chaos like that?
Where you are in your current time is reaching a peak of that chaotic change. And yet, how that will manifest is yet to be determined. The way that we often explain this is through the spiral, that at that hourglass of spiral, as it is spinning faster and faster toward that midpoint, that is where you are at. You are at that spiral spinning faster and faster, and therefore the chaos increases. And yet there is also a paradox within that, because it is as that chaos is increasing that your best flow with that is that surrender into the flow, because the resistance to it becomes much more difficult. And what that flow offers to you is a strengthening of that power to hold your coherence within the chaos. Because as you do that, you are approaching that 0 point, or what could be seen as a pole shift. And yet you are holding part of that pole shift. You are holding part of how that flow will ultimately occur. And yet it goes in one direction from your perspective. Though there are those two directions that are ultimately going to meet, and it is that 0 point that we call the implosion explosion that sounds very violent. And we do that specifically to help you process the emotionality of that, because what it actually is a transformation into that next flow. Because the process itself is not or does not have to be violent. It's that the process is such deep transformation that it is a powerful movement. And yet you experience this on levels all throughout your day. You experience this in many different ways. You experience this in a creative flow. You experience this in the orgasm flow. You experience this in a mind flow, the aha moment, the synchronicities. you experience this in those moments when you embrace that neutrality and you feel that broader connection. So the chaos that is occurring, for those that are holding their coherence with it, is an amazing ride. And that does not mean that the entire ride feels neutral or it feels safe, but it has the potential to feel more exciting because you are moving through a very natural process of life, like the birth canal. So there will be some earth changes, there will be some chaos in the physical experience, but it does not have to be a traumatic collapse. It is a birth. And as you hold that coherence within you, that flow starts to build more and more of that coherence. And this is what you have been doing. So as you experience the things that you're seeing around you, whether they are personal in your life or external and you're finding out about them on your news, then your work is allow that flow to happen and find that strength of neutrality within it so that as it's going on around you, you are holding that coherence of, I know where this is going. I know where this is going. It is moving into improvement. It is a birth. And that shifts those probabilities of how things will occur on the external. Do not feel as if it is on your shoulders and you must be perfect in order to manifest that. It is not that. Life will flow as it is meant to flow. But as you hold that authentic flow with it and allow your own processing of the experience to occur, that movement through that quickening of the spiral that you are in now brings that 0 point to more of its orgasmic flow rather than its chaotic or traumatic flow. It is that natural process of life.
Thank you. Yes, it's my understanding that because so many of us have been awakening and holding a high focus, that we've already eliminated some of the more chaotic timelines. Um, my other question was, very few channelers channel with their eyes open, and it's and not only do you have your eyes open, but I think perhaps you specifically have your eyes open because you're potentially specifically using them to transfer energy it, with your message. Can you comment on that?
Yes, that is correct. It is rather uncomfortable for the channel. It creates a different process for her to experience, and yet it is what we do because far more important than the words is the energy. And energy can certainly transmit through closed eyes. Yet this is the direct process that we choose to amplify that energy. And that allows that connection to occur on a very deep level that reinforces for your understanding that you are seeing. You are so important within this realm that our love to flow through eyes and see you is part of that energy that we transmit. It helps to reinforce that there is not a separation of better or higher or more intelligent. It is just a difference of form. And to transmit information through the eyes has layers of energy upon it. And yet, you are just as non-local and subtle as you are physical. And you receive this in many ways. But it is our desire to flow directly through the eyes and amplify that energy exchange. Thank you for that opportunity to express that. That is one of those layers of clear recognition of detail that is natural to you.
Thank you.
So thanks, Mark. Go ahead, Lisa.
Hello, can you hear me with my headphones?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Thank you so much for being with us. It's amazing. I have a question about this reality being a hologram. More people seem to be in agreement that we're living in a hologram. So I wanted to know, obviously my brain can't register this at all, but I'm trying to understand it the best I can. But are we in a hologram, and what exactly is in the hologram? Is it the Earth? Is it the whole universe, all the multiverses? And who is projecting the hologram?
Those are beautiful questions. And we will answer it in a way that layers things that we feel within it, whether that is coming from you or from others. Inbuilt into the understanding of a hologram is often the experience from the human perspective of separation. And so it can feel as if something is being projected to you. And yet we will shift that and help you to understand that you are the projector, that the hologram is occurring because your perception is inbuilt to experience this through separation. So we will break this down then into some detail about what a hologram is. So there's much that you already know about it, that within each little part, you could separate it and the whole would be within that. And this is what you are. This is what life is. That within you is the whole. You hold within you all time. You hold within you all space. And yet you see outside of you that which is not physically within you. So you are projecting the hologram all around you. And this is part of the physical experience, the experience of separation. So you are creating the hologram. That which seems separate is part of the whole. And so if you were to think of it as your own body system, that you have within you these separate parts, it's very physically expressed. And yet all of that is contained within the whole of you. This is the same experience that's happening all around you. Now, you very directly experience the separation. It is real in your reality. And so it is important to embrace that, to allow that to be, and then build onto that the connection that is inherent within it. Part of what creates a holographic expression is directed focused light that becomes split and then refocuses on an object. And so what you are creating within you is that direct focus of light that splits and reflects back. So the holographic expression is part of who you are, and it is what you are within. And so the ultimate projector of the hologram is you and all life. It is the container that all life is within. And while you are separate here within this dimensional expression, you are also connected into all. And what your beautiful, brilliant mind is doing is receiving and perceiving aspects of that hologram one at a time, one long moment at a time. And so what is connected seems separate. And what is experienced as separate is connected. So the holograph that can be cut in half and still have all parts of the whole within it, that is what you are as well. And your biomechanism naturally creates that experience of separation. And your awareness naturally creates that experience of connection. This is a beautiful question.
Thank you. I actually understood what you said. Thank you for explaining it in a way that would be easy to digest. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I have another quick, maybe quick. We'll see. We'll see how quick it is. Quick history question again. So if Lyrans were sort of the base race for the Lemurian experience, were the Lyrans also the base race for the Atlantis experience?
From our perspective, the Lyrans were not the direct physical basis of the Lemurian experience, but our heritage was. Our physical experience here was what the Lemurian experience, the Atlantean experience, was later built upon. And the physical expression of the Lemurians was a later iteration of our ancestry.
I see. So, and would that be the same for Atlantis then as well?
Yes.
Okay. And in time, I that's when you mentioned Venusian, Syrian, and other races started to come in and maybe use that base layer of the Lyrian energy and just add on to it.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Sandra has, we lost Sandra. Sandra had her hand up. Did you want to pop in there? Go ahead, Sandra.
Yes. Thank you so much. I would kindly like to inquire and ask the question, can any soul, or what's the difference between other dimensions and our souls to have the option to reincarnate? Is this for everyone from every dimension, every being from other dimensions? Or are we, as our human species, our soul, being truly something very special and maybe different, because maybe a mixture of all other beings, seeds put together, created for this earth life? Thank you.
What is occurring here on Earth is a unique experience, as they all are. And yet, this experience is far more mixed than many are. And part of why that is because there is such an elevation of the expression that the Akashic availability of the variety can express here more directly. And what we mean by that is there is an availability here where the physicality and the way that a soul or soul expressions can integrate with the physicality is much more viable to a higher subtle level and therefore a level of diversity. In essence, you are able to, from this biomechanism, connect directly with a greater variety of Akashic experience or broader experience. And so the physical experience on Earth is able to integrate more of that. Does that answer your question, or would you like to expand upon that?
Perhaps, if I can add something, thank you very much. Maybe the same question also from a different perspective or different light. Can any other being also reincarnate as a soul on Earth? Or is it just our soul being from, I don't know, whatever dimension that we have that option to reincarnate? Or can any other dimensional being reincarnate as well?
Yes, they can.
Thank you.
Yes. Good question.
Awesome. Thank you. Right quick, we're going to go to the chats. Lana has a question. Are the Lyrans connected to what we call angels or archangels? Is there a connection there?
There's not a direct connection in that our expression was a very physical expression. There is a connection in vibration in the sense that we are no longer physical, and yet we have a different job per se. We have a different interaction with humanity or with the building of the dimensional expressions than an archangel would. So it is more a difference in functionality.
Like you said earlier, the Lyrans came and connected with our soil and did sort of prepare terraformed Earth. Would it be more sort of hands-on on the ground type of interaction than archangels? Or could you be more specific in what type of roles you are in assisting?
It is more of a physically based interaction in the sense that our purpose was more directly linked to the expansion of the physical expression, the humanoid expression. Whereas the job function difference for an archangel would be more building on a dimensional level. Now, since we are no longer physical in that same type of expression, there is more of a similarity in vibrational structure, and yet our original job function was much different. Where they built on an energetic structural level, we built on a physical structural level. And now that we are no longer physical in that same sense, we are still intertwined and flowing with that physical structure more directly.
I see. Thank you. Catherine, you guys want to hop in?
Greetings. It's really lovely to chat. So this has recently come in with watching some documentaries. I'm sorry to shift gears, but it's actually about the moon. And so I wanted to ask your perspective of the moon, because you were talking about magnetism and it made me think about the moon. And I mean, obviously it's so vital to our planet and whatnot, but really wrapping my head around like, oh, like the moon is hollow and what's going on. And is Is it a biosphere? Is it a ship? If there's any information that you can share from your perspective about what the moon is, how it got here, and its functions other than what most of us know them to be, that would be beautiful. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, those are good definitions for it. And we consider it both, that it is both a biosphere and it is a ship. It is a physical creation and it is a blend of a natural creation. And it is part of how the original construct of Earth is supported. So it is not that we created that moon. It is that we understood how that particular structure would support this physicality. It was not always necessary, and yet there was a certain time frame that became necessary to continue to support this structure. As things readjusted, that moon became much more necessary to keep that supportive flow here. So as it functions now, it helps to maintain a certain balance that will allow the continued progression of Earth. There is much that occurs with the moon that is unknown or unexpressed. There is much that is becoming expressed, and yet the depth of that is far beyond what humanity has been able to fully understand. And that too will continue to reveal itself.
Thank you. So you didn't want to speak about any of the theories of different entities occupying, being on or in the moon, or what's going on the dark side of the moon? Or, I mean, I know that's probably different questions. And if you wanted to speak.
There are many different beings that are there. There are even human beings that are there. And yet that deeper discussion is not what we generally focus on. But yes, there is many beings there.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate you speaking into that.
Thanks, Catherine. Before we go to the next question, I wanted to squeeze one in here. The Lyran archetype typically is associated with feline energy, and from just my understanding, I was wondering if you could elaborate on what is that? What exactly is it? Is a structure? A lot of people say like the avatar designs came from the Lyran energy. Is that a physical thing, or is there more of an archetypal energy behind the Lyrans and felines? What is that connection exactly, if there is one at all?
It is more so a physical recognition that you have of those patterns. And yet, part of what you experience, even with your felines in this physicality, will reflect some of that as well. The general structure looked feline, and therefore you have that deep memory. It is rather similar to the structure that was created with that avatar body. And yet the correlation that feels so deeply connected into so many of you, because it is part of that heritage, is reflected in many of your feline species here. There is a natural strength and balance within the self, because there is a bit more of an autonomy that connects on a very deep level. And so how the felines behave will be reflected in some of that Lyran core that is within your Akash. That autonomy and deep connection is part of that integration of the polarity, that the self and the separation is understood more deeply, and the connection is understood more deeply as well. So as you see those characteristics within yourself, that is part of that Lyran heritage. And yet there is a physical recognition or shadow or reflection that many will see in the feline structure.
Awesome. Thank you. Lisa, you have another question? Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to piggyback on the moon, the moon question. Last year I was walking and I saw, it was a crescent moon. It was broad daylight and I saw the moon. So I had seen it earlier on my walk and then I wanted to find it again. And I did. And then it started traveling. It friggin' traveled all across the sky and then stopped right above my head. And then I just saw Mina posted from, Mina Full Travel. Yeah. She posted a video. Yeah. Somebody else actually captured it in a video. The moon, the crescent moon, like just, it looks like a spaceship and it's just like soaring through the sky. Can you speak to that?
There are personal experiences and somewhat collective experiences that you will have that will bend what is expected. Because as things are responding to your resonance, there will be things that are very physical in nature and yet visible only to you or to some or to a person that will capture that experience, have that experience, and understand that the physicality that is around you is not the whole story. So in essence, you were able to move into a visible vibration with a projection, but a very physical projection. We do not mean to imply that that was not there. With a projection that is visible to you. And yet there could be others around you not within that resonance and not having that same experience. So you were experiencing a very visible ship, a very visible moon moving, and yet that experience was beyond that physical dimension that others may be resonating within.
Right. So I actually did see it moving. The ship
Yes.
was moving across the sky. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Lisa. So we'll go with 2 more questions, and I'm just wondering if we could at the end, if you have some light language for us, you could share. Okay.
Yes.
All right, Laura, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
My question is also, and I appreciate you being here. Thank you. My question is also to piggyback on the moon question, and that is the the energy of the moon. You had said helps things here on Earth. I can't remember exactly what you said, but my question is
Balance things and
balance things. So, does the moon's energy in certain phases of the moon affect the energy of humans? And does it affect the energy of crystals, earth crystals?
That it does. It creates many levels of balance, of support. And part of what it does is the amount of light that it is reflecting. And it is important that it is reflecting light because that moves that light through a certain frequency. So how that is affecting you, how that is affecting the earth, how it is affecting everything on earth changes because of that light reflection. So the crystals that you put in the moon energy have a different experience based on how much light is reflected.
So another question, on a new moon, when there is no light reflected, what kind of energy is there?
And that is a powerful reset point of the light. So that there is that time that seems as if there is no light. And that starts that new cycle. It gives that moment of pause so that as that light then begins to build, that is that new phase.
So cool. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Laura.
Yes.
Jessica, go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. Are the Lyrans working with other interdimensionals or extra dimensionals as part of the Galactic Federation? And are the Lyrans helping to wake humanity up, maybe one individual at a time? Or possibly a group of collectives at a time?
Yes to all of that. Yes, there is interaction with galactic councils, and yet our flow of information tends to be more broad in that we are not physical. And so our interaction occurs on different levels. But we are the Lyran Council of Time because part of what we work with is how time is flowing, how the information is reacting to time. And so we work not only with humanity, but we work with many different groups because we understand that flow of time so deeply. And we have been working very directly with humanity. We have been working indirectly with humanity, but we have been working very directly with humanity to help increase and flow that natural awakening that has been occurring because you are at a very powerful and exciting time.
Thank you.
Excellent. I'm going to squeeze one more question in from the chat. That's okay. Have extra dimensionals created the Earth experience in order to ascend to a new dimension? And is the idea, well, let's just go with that first. Is this an experiment by extra dimensional beings to evolve?
It is the life of extra dimensionals. It is the life of life. We do not experiment with it. We experience it. That is who you are. This is what you do. This is the experience of life. It is natural to evolve and to ascend into new expressions. How that path will flow and the timing of that path will vary. But you are the extra dimensionals. You are experiencing ascension to new levels because that is what life does. It evolves and changes. And you do this well.
Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. Well, you can bring Jamie back and we'll get into some light language. Thank you for sharing your wisdom.
Isha, Ema, Eta.
Jamye.
Nice.
Yeah, we went all over the place on that one. You guys surprised me every
We
time.
went to the moon.
We went to the moon. To the moon. Yes.
I love it.
Dogecoin.
I love it.
Awesome.
You know what's so funny is I don't remember if this was today or yesterday, maybe both days, I don't know, but I was thinking about many years ago, I was channeling in my apartment in LA, and Ariane came to me in 2012, like November of 2012, and asked me to channel them directly. And as they did that, I recognized their energy, even though I didn't know them directly. They had been my guides for a very long time. So at that time, they were always channeling with their eyes open. I mean, almost always. Sometimes I would keep my eyes closed, but 90% of the time, my eyes were open. And it's not how I like to channel. It's so much easier to channel with your eyes closed.
Right.
And I was just thinking this morning when I was channeling in my apartment in Los Angeles. So this was probably 5, 6, 7 years before Ariane came directly. I would always channel with my eyes closed, and it was always different energies, which is typical. And not that everyone has that experience, but your body gets used to a certain energy. And so at that time, it was all different energies. And so it was always kind of difficult. And I would always keep my eyes closed. And I remember this one energy, like they were forcing my eyes open and I was trying to force my eyes closed. And they would force my eyes open and I would force them closed. And so it was this whole battle of like, so, I don't know if that was Ariane or not, but by the time Ariane came and they were like, eyes open, I was
Wow.
like, okay.
It was super cool for Mark to recognize that. Good job, Mark,
Yeah.
on recognizing that the energy transfer that's coming through the eyes like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, when we first started doing the video ones in the subscription, Todd and I were filming it, and we didn't know what was going to happen. Like if they were going to keep their eyes open, or will I have my eyes open but I'm not looking at the camera? And he turned the camera on, and it was like stare. There was no choice. There was nothing. It was just like, this is how it's happening.
well received. We received it well, I should say. So thank you.
Nice.
Thanks for
That
the
was
transmission.
fun. Thanks for all the awesome questions.
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I'm doing this big deep dive, and all this Atlantean and Lemurian history has been coming up, and I've been going down many rabbit holes. So I'm like, ooh, opportunity to talk to Lyrans about
Yes.
the Lyrans about that stuff. So thank you.
Yeah. Very cool. So I would be happy to do some light language.
Yes.
So as I'm doing the light language, just see what you notice. Any kind of physical sensations, any unusual thoughts or emotions. Sometimes they'll show you what's releasing or activating. Any other kind of psychic impressions, like seeing colors or anything like that. Just see what you notice. It's totally fine if you don't notice anything. Your higher self will be clearing and activating in a way that's perfect for you. But in the spirit of all the things that we were talking about, let's support that heart-mind coherence for amplifying our natural awareness that's inbuilt into our biomechanism. So take a nice, relaxing breath. Bremet unust dairumak armat iret. Tamur namuk ormat iktel renendet iret hansu. Chamur derut ukurama krama krairat and iklul remedshut. Nem sukrur tandi irumet il. Su shamut Kerem akrien dat endet orm. Bremekten sharut num sakradat tierut oam. Samu kramchar kurur tand iruma. Damur ankrat shairat anon sochorum. Jamok randat an sakrayalel remdet ekrandat irat. Kan akrurumat ansteirumat sum. Chamur madangrat kam krormat il. Chanurem det sanshayarot okwa. Kan krayanumat brandat an. Klel hermekot sham urunumat in. Krema kriendat. Samukush diagrandat. san steiru krorumat im. Kremet shanat handir nan sukort. Kal rakrem charatinendet em. Brorumat I et such anam tak ayet el. Samo sham krorumat brim. Kremat andut brem krendet il. Renendet id etant such Amor grandet hem sukoret. Kal rekram sharek rendet em sukrurmet. Jamur dam du kurt aktiert hand. Kal renenet sukrurmet cham tut ua. Sukoret. Eni sam sukoret hand. Kam staya grandet hand et il renem. Bremensun shandet krayet an kror tel renea. Remset shandut sakrendet hin. Habramaba kan shantan sekrurme. Brimem shanata krayanda dandiat andot ukora teatunum. Brimem mehat som shandukrora dandit eklel renenat sukruinima. Brimem anshandet tengderut ukora tand. Kal rakram charaknandet insujum. Amor mnanek jet sanantant indikril renim anum. Brimakran shatakrayalal renanda. Kam sukur. Hirimshano tsam charakrayamat and. Kalele mekram charatandit im sukrur mim anshirit kririt and. Akramakanda thailarana. Hirim sum steyr makranda thimba. Kalelu makan steyr matsum chanadandit im. Imea mea no mea. Urmema nane andur ukoremea. Akambat sucham nunu karura kandet ed. Good. Good. You can take another relaxing breath. If you want, you can rub your hands together, bring yourself into an active brain state. Nice. Good. Good. So some of you might have had a different experience because your higher self was clearing and activating based on your needs. But part of what I was experiencing in that first, like, I don't know, quarter or half or something, a lot of Syrian energy, working very physically with this whole straight channel from the heart to the head, but then how the head flows outward, meaning like the electromagnetic field. So it was kind of like the Ankh, that top of the Ankh. And then there was a lot going on to help integrate the lower chakras and the head. And the last thing that I was noticing was like this more expansive and almost sphere-like, like flowing sphere energy. So that was neat.
Yeah, very cool. Thank you. I feel like being exposed to all this other light language, I feel like I'm getting some OG light language upgrades here. That's super powerful. And I don't know if I just didn't pay attention before, but it just seems more refined now. Have you your process or the light language that's coming through just seems very specific, more than before. I don't know. Maybe that's just because I'm paying more attention than I was before. But yeah, thank you. That was super, super amazing.
Yeah, I feel like it always refines and it expands over time, like, and definitely that was the experience when I first began. Like you can see, and I actually, even if you look at like really old videos of when I first started putting it on YouTube, which was at least a decade after I was already doing it, but I was very shy. I can see that difference even there. Like, we grow in power, we grow in confidence, we grow in flow and experience and things. So yeah, and it continues to refine and expand.
Well, super powerful, very much felt the whole experience. Jamie, the person, the Lyran Council, the light language, everything. So super blessed and honored for you coming on today. Thank you so much.
Yes. Very, very fun.
And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'll be putting links and stuff. Do you have any events and things coming up that maybe we can help support?
So my website is my name, jamyeprice.com. And I'm teaching light language starting September 9th. And that's the last class that I'll do this year. So it's the in-depth experience where we go through speaking, signing, writing, whatever else is left, singing. We do all the different forms, and I go in depth all about that, and it's lots of fun.
Awesome. We'll put links in the replay. And again, thank you so much for.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for the great questions and fun, and thanks for being here, and thanks for having me.
Cool. Thank you. Well, we'll see you in Sedona soon.
Yes, great to see you, Reuben. Thanks.
Bye.
Bye, everyone. Bye.
Join me in my membership portal where you too can engage directly with guests on my show, ask them your own questions, and communicate with the beings and energies that they channel. Head to interviewwithed.com, click join, and let your curiosity lead you. Understanding that exploring these new worlds and concepts can make a positive difference in our personal lives and together as a collective.